Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas, and I'm not really going to be your host today. So this is going to be episode 120, and it's kind of a bonus special episode, if you will. So some of you can remember that last year, Mustafa and I worked on a PAX East roundup. Well, this year, we decided to change things up a bit because we were fortunate enough to submit and have a panel of ours accepted at PAX East. And we both sat on that in addition to some other great panelists. And we decided that we would record the panel and make it available as an episode for you guys. So in particular, the panel is about networking, so that's going to be a good core of the discussion. Specifically, it was called Leveling Up Your Conversation, A Guide to Marketing Yourself. So it's not necessarily specific to indie games, if you will, but the principles still definitely apply and are very valuable for anyone who's looking to get into knowing how to network a little bit better or improve their networking or whatever you may fall on that. So we feel that the discussion that we had at PAX East was definitely a good one. And it seemed that the people that were there really benefited quite a bit. I will make a quick note too, that there was a presentation deck that was available for people to see. And if you want that presentation deck, then I would ask you to go to rengenmarketing.com/PAX East 2020. I will make sure that that's provided in the notes as well, or at least the link, so you can go ahead and sign up and receive that if you're interested in getting the presentation deck. It also has the notes as well, or some of the discussion points that we had in the panel. So if anyone wants to just not have to listen to the episode numerous times, you can access the presentation deck, and it will probably make that easier. All right, that's all I have to talk about. So hopefully you guys will really enjoy this bonus episode of the PAX East panel of 2020, How to Level Up Your Conversation, A Guide to Marketing Yourself.
Hello. How's everybody doing today? How's your PAX been going? Awesome. That's what we like to hear up here. So, well, thank you so much for coming out to Level Up Your Conversation, A Guide to Marketing Yourself. And just to let you all know, you'll notice on this slide and all the other slides, there's a link. If you go to it, you can put in your email address, and this presentation deck will be made available. I can't say it will be made available instantly, but if you put in your information, we'll provide the deck and any of the main discussion points that we talked about today. So feel free to fill out your info because we really just want you to sit back, relax, and just take everything in. By all means, if you want to take notes, go ahead, but it will be made available. So just a note on that. And we'll just get right to it with introductions, and I'll just go ahead and start down the line here.
Hi, I'm Starlight Skies. I am a Twitch partner, and I've been in the game industry for almost a decade. I work with indie companies and consulting on community and social media.
Hi, my name is Mustafa Price. I am 1/3 of Featherfellow Games, and I'm the producer of the Indie Game Movement podcast with our moderator and fearless leader here.
Neil, if you want to.
Oh, sure. I'm Neil Lorenza. I'm the managing director at a company called SkyMap Games. We do work for hire services in the game industry. We've shipped about 30 games over the course of the last 8 years, most recently Real Mist, and working on Bloodstained and Spellbreak and a few others.
I'm Victoria. I'm the communications director at Kit Fox Games. We're currently on the show floor if you want to see us, but we're making a game called Boyfriend Dungeon, Lucifer Within Us, and we're also publishing games like Mondo Museum, Dwarf Fortress, and Six Ages.
Awesome. And my name is Andrew Pappas. I'm the founder of Rengen Marketing, a company that provides consulting and marketing services to indie devs, and also the host of Indie Game Movement podcast, which Mustafa kindly helps me out quite a bit with. So, all right, that's us, and we'll get right to it. with, where do we begin? Now, we all know networking can be pretty intimidating for sure. So, what are some good ways that we can start going about this process?
Sure. I think you're already starting. By being here at PAX, Penny Arcade Expo is a great place to go and meet new people. It can be a little tricky when you're first trying to make introductions and chat with folks, but the nice thing about the expo hall is there are so many wonderful folks that are willing to share any information about not only their projects, but what they do for work. So it's a great place to talk to friendly faces. So it's a good start.
Yeah, I feel like networking can kind of be a weird name for some people, but it's mainly just relationship building, right? Just going into a conversation and knowing your goals and kind of what you want to do really helps out. But most of all, you're just not trying to just use someone. You're trying to build a relationship with them because you never know where, down the line they might offer you a job or give you a key. It's just something that you do naturally rather than being give me something.
Yeah, and I think to kind of build off of what Victoria said, I think it's very easy when you're considering your own personal growth, which networking can be kind of tied to fall into a somewhat opportunistic way of thinking about what you can get out of the conversation. But ultimately, I think the reason a lot of us are here is because ultimately this is a community. It's a new medium, but it's also a community that we share. And so you should be excited at the prospect of meeting people, partially because they share an interest with you, and also because there are a lot of interesting people here with different backgrounds and experiences that you can really gain a lot from. So I think kind of taking the approach of wanting to meet and learn about people really sets you up for success.
I think the most important thing is just having authenticity of actually being curious and wanting to learn more things, so that when you are networking with people, it comes off as genuine. So they all gave great answers. It's hard to follow up.
And from another... Oh, sorry. No.
I was going to say part of being genuine means just asking people questions and engaging with them as human beings. Not everyone, if you're going for trying to get a job, for example, I like what you said about having a goal. If you're trying to get a job somewhere, don't just, it's not about just going and asking outright, and it's really about trying to build a relationship and finding out what is it that people do, who are they, what are their aspirations, and following up.
Yeah, and to go off of the whole goal or having an objective or a plan, and by no means does a plan need to be very elaborate, right? You and it depends on what you're there for. It still comes down to building those relationships, and a plan could be as simple as, hey, I'm just going to talk to people I've never met before. Or a plan could be I know my objective or my ultimate goal is to look for a job, but at the same time, what's most important, like everybody's already said, is really focusing on the community, the relationship building, and everything else. But having a rough idea and some directive is always going to be helpful, so that way you could achieve that, but also focusing on the other areas too. So, great point, guys. And moving on, we're talking about leveling up here, so what are some good ways that we can get better at this, and what are some of the benefits?
I'm just curious to understand the makeup of the room here. Who here is curious about networking because you're interested in breaking into video games, the video game industry, for example, by quick raise of hands? How about folks who are interested in becoming streamers or getting into building that kind of network? What other there's lots of stuff, isn't there? Esports, yeah.
And how about just other gaming groups?
Yeah.
All right, sweet.
Awesome. Yeah. It seems like there's a lot of folks interested in breaking into games, so I'll try to think about that a little bit. I think that the easy thing is, if you're looking to get better, like I mentioned, I would first start by trying to remember everyone is sort of winging it. And even though people might have been in games for a while, no one really truly necessarily considers himself an expert. Everyone's always learning. So something I always recommend is, if you're trying to get better at networking, try to talk to people, yes, but also try to build relationships and mentorships with folks that are doing things that you are interested in pursuing, and seeing if there are people who will teach you, because that's a big part of how I broke in. I found that helpful personally.
Yeah, I think a lot of like a misconception is that soft skills are really easy or they come really naturally to people, but they don't, right? They're soft skills for a reason. You have to work on them and you have to make mistakes. And the more mistakes you make, the more it means you're playing at your upper limit, which means you're improving and you learn from your mistakes the most. So I think it's going to be really easy to get down on yourself and be like, oh, I'm not good at this. Like, what's the point? But it's doing the thing, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, and taking mental note of that and improving upon that.
Yeah, I think self-awareness is really important, where you're actually, knowing what questions you want to ask ahead of time, and you're paying attention to your mood before you're talking to people. So if you're like really tired or really hungry, probably not the best time to want to interact with strangers. I know sometimes I've like talked to people and I feel like, oh my God, why did I just say that? That was really embarrassing and I'll never want to talk to them again. But instead of like doing that, I've like what Victoria just said, I learned from my mistakes and I'll go back to them and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was really tired last night. Like this is, how I really am. So.
Yeah, and I think to discuss like the benefits specifically, like, is there anybody here who's like at PAX for the first time by chance?
Wow.
That's so cool.
Awesome.
You guys are awesome.
Right, so you know that
Sleep.
feeling when you first got onto the show floor and like your heart was racing, and you're like, oh my God, where do I go? Like when you know people because you've networked, that actually makes that feeling a lot less severe. Like having kind of a game plan, knowing that there are people on the floor, faces that you can recognize, hands you can shake, and kind of developing your own identity within this big but also small, environment. So the benefit is that it kind of has like Victoria was saying about soft skills, it's kind of like a snowball effect. Like the better you get at it, the easier it becomes. And the easier being in a space like this becomes. It never becomes perfectly easy. I still freak out every time I step onto the floor, but, it's easier. It gets more comfortable.
Yeah, and on that note, too, like, I know we talked about, like, plans or goals or objectives, too, but, like, in just keeping that simple, like, one thing that I've actually been doing, in particular this PAX, is, so I've been coming here for about 9 years now, and about maybe 7 years ago, the Behemoth came out with this lanyard. I saw some people with the lanyard. I just simply went up to them and talked and was like, where'd you get that? Are they giving them out again? No. And they're like, no, I got this 8 years ago. And it was such a simple conversation, but the fact, because, I've been doing this for a while. I've been talking to lots of people, and generally I like to consider myself outgoing, but it can still be very intimidating too. But just even having a quick interaction, it's going to give you more confidence to know that, hey, look, I just talked to that person real quick about something. It was a great interaction. I wasn't looking for anything other than just, I'm talking about a lanyard. Like, I can't imagine how bad a conversation can go if you're talking about a lanyard, but but it's a good way just to simply get out there, talk a little bit more on a very simplistic level. And I just see that as a benefit, because the more you engage with people, even if it's on simple topics, the more you're going to feel confident about, just moving forward.
Yeah.
So.
And there's plenty to engage with, too. Like, the cool thing is everybody who's here really likes games. Mm-hmm. So there's plenty to talk about.
I hate games.
Oh.
Oh, no. This
How could you?
Yeah, actually, confession on that front on my end.
And quoted.
No!
Actually, something to throw into, like, how do you get better at this, I guess was part of the question. Follow-up. Follow-up is really important. We have this rule. It's like it's what I call touch points, where anytime that I meet someone, yes, I go and I have a conversation with them, and ideally, like, make eye contact and like wear deodorant and all the other stuff that sometimes doesn't happen at PAX. But like, try to do those things as best you can, and then follow up with that person. One touch is like, I just met you, cool. Another touch is, I just added you on LinkedIn. I sent you a follow-up email and said, hey, it was really great to meet you, and it was fun to talk about XYZ. Would love to pick your brain on this later, right? There's lots of, the more you can sort of remind folks that you exist, I think the more likely they're to remember and think of you later. So.
Yeah, and that's a great point too, because if you really think about it, like, you can't, like, follow-up is so important too, because let's face it, we're all very busy regardless of what you're doing, and people forget all the time. So having that understanding, like, and it's you don't have to go into it thinking like, oh, if I'm following up with this person, I'm going to annoy them or I'm going to bug them. That's, in a lot of cases, not the case. And a lot of times, I'll follow up with people, and yes, I even myself, I'll still feel like, oh, am I bugging them or whatever.